Hey, Mel. Bri here. Gotta work from home today because the whole family caught a nasty...
Daddy!
Hey, Mikey! If you're gonna puke, find the popcorn bowl! But my availability is 110%. Coincidentally, so is my fever. Kidding. Mel, I'm so cold but hot. But I'm gonna get you that budget just as soon as... Mikey! Popcorn bowl!
Press 1 to use Instacart and get your family sick day essentials delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Press 2 to keep working. Do not press 2. Just use Instacart, Brian.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, GoPowercat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Now, here's your host, GoPowercat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Postgame Podcast. Tim Fitzgerald and Cole Carmody here in the Cats and Dogs studio following Kansas State's 41-0 victory. Nothing, nada for the Houston Cougars.
Zilch.
Zilchola. That's a fancy word for zilch. Man, Cole Carmody, let's just get into it. That was a butt whooping. The kind of butt whooping you don't see in conference play in the Big 12 that often. Now that Kansas is good, we'll get to Kansas maybe a little bit later in this podcast after that win over Oklahoma. But this is about K-State's complete domination from beginning to end over the Houston Cougars.
I've been trying to think about it. As I was driving over here, I was trying to think about how often we see blowouts like this happen in the Big 12, regardless of who blows who out. It just doesn't happen. Look at last week, for example. That was such a rare game. I mean, 41-3, and then you get 41-0. That just doesn't happen in the Big 12, but it definitely doesn't happen in back-to-back weeks. I don't think fans really – a lot of fans have truly understood so far like how impressive these last 2 weeks have been, because regardless of the teams, these are Power 5 teams that K-State is going against, and teams that could still realistically make a bowl game. You look at Houston's schedule, it's pretty favorable down the stretch. They can still make a bowl game, and obviously TCU is the same way. So yeah, you just don't see blowouts like this happen.
I think both coaches in postgame just said it's time to move on. I mean, if you're K-State, you can't get wrapped up in this or last week or the fact that you've scored your opponents basically over the last 5 halves, outscored them 103-3. I mean, I can't remember when Houston scored last, or excuse me, Texas Tech scored last. But once it was 21-7 Red Raiders, Kansas State has outscored its opponents by 100 points in that short a period of time. And that is simply awesome football. It started with Avery Johnson playing well. Last week, they both played okay. This week, this was all Will Howard doing the damage in the main part of the game. You got to take your hat off to Iron Will Howard. He is taking control of this position again. He left no doubt who belongs on the field after this. As the Wildcats go into Texas, Will Howard is QB1, and it didn't look close in this game.
It looked like the Will from last year.
Right.
I mean, he was in total command of the offense. I mean, even changing plays at the line, Fitz. That's what I was impressed the most with. Like, this is a guy who's obviously been in the system for a long time, but he was playing with supreme confidence today. And, you know, this Houston defense had been shaky, no doubt about it, but they made that defense look like Swiss cheese because there were holes all over the place, and Will Howard was finding every single one. And again, we saw Will Howard take what was given to him. He didn't try and force it down the field. But on the flip side, when a shot was available, when there was a one-on-one ball, he trusted his receiver to go up and make a play. He started the game 12 for 12. It was impressive to watch. And he didn't make a lot of big plays, but he made the plays that the team needed. And when you're running the ball as effectively as K-State did, they didn't have a lot of big runs. The running numbers probably aren't as good as you would have thought in a 41-0 game. But when you're able to just pound the rock away and force Houston to bring multiple guys in the box, it lets your receivers win one-on-one.
There were some amazing stats in this game that outline that domination. Total offensive plays was 70-59 in K-State's favor, but time of possession was 34 minutes and 34 seconds for the Cats, 25-26 for the Cougars. You just keep going down here. Third down conversions. K-State was 10 of 14, Houston 3 of 14, and they were 0-4 on fourth downs also. This one, though, absolutely blows me away. This stat, K-State scored 6 touchdowns. They did miss an extra point late when the backup kicker, I'm not going to call him out, it was his first time. He's kicking in bad weather. He missed the extra point on the last touchdown. So they had 6 touchdowns. Kansas State ran 70 plays, 51 of which were on touchdown drives. And, in fact, there was 2 really short drives at the end of 5 and 2 plays. So most of their plays led to touchdowns in this game, and none of Houston's plays led to anything.
They didn't even get in the red zone.
They were never threatening to score. Last week we saw TC threaten. They didn't get in the end zone or they didn't put more points up because they were trying to get into the end zone. And Tech tried 1 field goal, right? Missed it. Is that right?
Or Houston?
Houston.
Yes.
Yeah, yep.
1 missed field goal. And that was after the Avery Johnson fumble, where K-State gave them the ball around the 30-yard line. They went backwards a few yards. I think it was probably like 3rd and 8 maybe, and they missed a 45-yard field goal. But they never even came close to getting in the red zone. I would be curious to go back and look at how many times they actually crossed the 50. I don't think it was as much as we recall, because this K-State defense was impressive. And we talked about Donovan Smith, all the way in the lead up to this game. This is a quarterback who had been really good. 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He had the numbers that Will Howard had in the second half of the season. Now, did he do a lot of it in garbage time? Sure he did. But he only turned the ball over 4 times. He had only thrown 4 interceptions, and he obviously threw an interception. Today, K-State had 2 turnovers. He wasn't himself, but I think a lot of that had to do with what K-State was doing defensively.
And the weather. I'm telling you, it is one of my ironclad beliefs in college football. When a warm weather team comes north into the cold, particularly for the first time of the season, they don't want to be there. And that's exactly what Houston looked like throughout this game. They just weren't inspired. That passing game for Houston that was so effective against Texas last week gave Texas so many issues. Yeah, 15-31 with 1 interception for 95 yards passing. Yeah, Donovan Smith was rattled out of whack all day, and the only thing that went right for Houston is they got to go home.
They were ready to go home.
They were ready to go home by halftime when it was 28-0.
Donovan Smith's QBR on the day was 11.3. Will Howard's was 94.7.
There you go. That's the podcast. Talk to you later. I don't, honestly, we're going to struggle for much to talk about in this game.
Yeah.
There were some outstanding performances on defense. But I feel like right now, Cole, that it's not about individuals on defense. Will Lee had the pick. Will Lee forced the fumble. Will Lee was clearly really good. Nate Matlack was good in this game. Des Purnell continued to play well. Austin Romaine came back at middle linebacker and was really good. They tried to put him on an island, and Houston got him isolated on a receiver or someone. I can't remember if it was receiver or running back, and they tried to go deep.
Running back, yeah.
And Romaine ran with him.
Mm-hmm.
You just go down the list. Jake Clifton was good again. Kobe Savage was good again.
Marquise Siegel was the leading tackler.
Siegel was good. But most of all, this is about a defense that has turned from having troubles with big plays, giving up those explosives, to a defense that is giving up almost nothing. They have made it look like pure domination for the last 2 full games and a big chunk of the end of that Texas Tech game. It's been absolutely incredible to watch. This defense that seemed shaky now is one of the best defenses in the country, not just the Big 12, over the last 3-4 weeks. It's incredible. Even in loss against Oklahoma State, when things didn't go well, the offense was dysfunctional, the defense still held up fairly well. They forced a lot of field goals.
It's time to give Joe Kleinerman his flowers.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who's completely retooled that defense after even Chris Kleiman said, hey, we lost Echo Boydo, Josh Hayes, Julius Prince. It took us some time to figure it out. But again, we talked about this in the beginning part of the season, the middle part of the season as it went on. What were the two weaknesses with this K-State team? It was the offensive line and it was the secondary. Mm-hmm. And I can specifically remember saying if there are two position groups that I think can get it figured out because of the coaches that they have, it is those two position groups. And Fitz, right now, those two position groups are the strongest on the defense. I mean, the secondary has gone from being a major question mark to being the best part of that K-State defense. They are good because they are fast. And we saw that speed at times be a little bit, maybe not always in the right spot, right? Think about the Missouri game. How many times did we see Jacob Parrish and Willie run with the Missouri receivers but just not turn their head around and not try and make a play? Well, this at the same time, Keenan Garber, a guy who might be the fastest cornerback in that room, wasn't even on the field. Now he's developed into a very trustworthy cornerback, and we're seeing the speed that K-State wanted to recruit. Jacob Parrish, again, 100-meter state champion in high school. Guy, fast players that are on that defense, and again, the secondary has just turned into the best unit on the defense.
It's impressive what's happened, but nothing is more impressive than that offensive line and what they're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Cooper Beebe, I don't mean to be. I really don't want to exaggerate what he did to a certain Houston player, but it's a damn shame. He'll probably never have children. It wasn't just a pancake block. It was a sterilizer. Mm-hmm. He knocked everything out of that guy. It was unbelievable.
You could hear it on the broadcast. I went back and watched the clip, and you could hear the block on the field mic.
I would love to know what he was thinking. I wish we could slow that down and understand what that player was thinking. Number 21 on defense, right? They had 21 was running back, 21 on defense. Anyhow, that was defensive back Juwan Gaston. He went from suddenly realizing, oh no, I'm getting squared up on, to, oh no, I'm having an out-of-body experience. I'm currently floating. Oh no, that's real. I am floating. Yeah. I'm going backwards. My legs are now higher than my head. No, it was on. And we all thought there was a holding on the play, and it turned out it was a hands to the face. So even Houston couldn't do penalties right in this game. Speaking of penalties, K-State had 1 for 5 yards. That's it.
Impressive.
Team's playing really well. Is that this is such a sports writer thing to say. Is that a good thing going into Texas? I mean, it's almost been too easy.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, history tells me with this team, and, we're around them a lot more than, national people. And I just, you look at the leadership on this team, and people want to talk about culture, and I understand that, but so much goes into what this staff is building. And I think it really does start with the ground up. After the game, Nate Matlack talked about how Deuce Green is still very much a leader. He still talks in the captain's meetings. But he said that Austin Moore, and this is quote for quote, came in with a pissed off focus on Wednesday. After the team had just won 41-3, after everybody in that room knew they were going up against an inferior opponent because they lost at practice, they were pissed. That is culture. And it could have been very easy for this team to say, it's an 11 o'clock game. We're playing Houston. They're not very good. We're going to show up. We don't even have to play our best, and we'll still win. And you know what, Fitz? They could have. Yep. They could have very easily won this game 24-13, and nobody would have been complaining because, you know what? They still would have won by double digits and been, fine rolling down to Texas. But they really are starting to believe in each other. They're starting to believe into the coaching staff. And it is a different team than last year. This is a different kind of leadership. These guys know that they're good, and they want to use that, and they want to prove to people that they are good. Last year's group, they had a chip on their shoulder because they realized people didn't think they were very good. These guys know that they're good, and they want to prove it to people.
Yeah, they're now on a mission. And that's what great coaches do. They take a performance like at Oklahoma State and find the good in it, which is maybe to find a message that resonates with your players about how they have to play kind of shame them into better play. That worked. But also, I know it wasn't the purpose of playing Avery Johnson. Avery played at Tech because he was fabulous. Mm-hmm. It appears to me that they have lit a fire under Will Howard. Will, you're talking about pissed off. You can talk about how cooperative those two have been in the quarterback room, how good they've been, how they've handled it. But it was clear to us on Tuesday when we spoke to Will Howard, he was pissed off. He was sharing time. Mm-hmm. He felt like he had proven himself, and he went out and proved himself once again that he's the starting quarterback. And I think for now they need to realize that Avery Johnson can help. They need to find ways he can help because he's too good of an athlete not to play. You've already gone past his redshirt thing with today's game. It was game number 5. So he's not redshirting. Just find ways that he can get on the field and help this team. And I hope, and I really seriously don't think you need trickery to beat Texas. Mm-hmm. You need to come out and be really sound and physical. You need to be prepared for the shock value of the raw talent and physicality across the ball from what you've seen. But I think there's some things there that they can exploit with Will and Avery that they need to exploit. They're special. I mean, they're both special in their own ways. And I think if you put them out there on the field sometimes, you can really mess with the defense, what they're doing. I mean, Avery can chuck the ball around the field now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they find a way to do that and get the most out of the talent that they have on this roster because they're doing it. Chris Kleiman talked after the game that amazingly they feel like they're fairly deep on defense because the injuries have helped them develop talent. Mm-hmm. Having Deuce Green out stings. It hurts. But Austin Romaine and Jake Clifton have just really taken control of that middle linebacker position.
If you look at that defense, you know how many guys on that defense that are going to be coming back next year? I mean, this could be a top 10 defense in the country. And, you know, for as much as everyone's focused on this year, and we know those guys are focused on this year, this team that Chris Kleiman is building is not going anywhere. So for people that, you know, want to sit here and get mad about K-State not beating anybody and, oh, they lost 2 games, they should have won. You know what? I'm here to tell you that if you are tired of K-State winning games, you're going to be exhausted by the end of it, because when this new Big 12 comes rolling around, K-State is going to be positioned to be a top 3 team every single year because of the way that A, they play their young players, and B, the way that they get buy-in and they're able to develop talent. It's impressive. And is there holes on this team? For sure there is. But I look at some of those young guys. You talked about the linebackers, Fitz. Look at Garrett Oakley. I mean, this is a guy who took advantage because Ben Sinnott got hurt last week, and now all of a sudden he gets 3 catches. He catches a touchdown. He's going to be a guy that they're going to try and get the ball to. And if you can have 2 tight ends that are mismatches, because Garrett Oakley is a mismatch, he is baby Ben Sinnott. He is going to be just as good of a player as Ben Sinnott is. I firmly believe that. I mean, that's deadly. I mean, if you have 2 legitimate tight ends, that is deadly.
Well, they throw an interesting pattern today where they split both tight ends out. Sinnott wasn't on the field. Maybe he was, but they had 2 tight ends on the left side of the formation, and they ran one off, and Oakley and Swanson, and the other one came underneath for a first down. Really well-designed play. I think Collins in the zone as offensive coordinator. Joe Klanderman is in the zone as defensive coordinator. They've got players just playing with purpose right now, purpose and focus. And as they always consistently say, it's not because they're playing well on Saturdays. It's because they're getting it done in practice all the days leading up to Saturday. They're going to have a good week of practice, I bet, with Texas. They're going to be loaded for bear. They know this is it. This is their only opportunity to make it to the Big 12 championship now, for the most part. Mm-hmm. Because of that loss at Oklahoma State, they can't afford a second loss in this conference. They can put themselves in the driver's seat to get to Arlington with a win over Texas. Huge challenge next weekend. We'll get into that after this break on the Powercat Postgame Podcast.
GoPowerCat.com's Powercat Podcast continues after this short break.
If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com and use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast.
Welcome back to the Powercat Postgame Podcast. Kansas State wins 41-0. It wasn't in overtime. That was in regulation against Houston as an absolute blowout. It was just a domination from beginning to end. And what's been a very interesting day around the Big 12, a lot of blowouts and one really close, fun game in Lawrence with the Sooners and the Jayhawks. We'll get to that in a second. But Kansas State's opponent next week is Texas, beating BYU 35-6 in Austin with the backup quarterback. You watched some of this game, right? Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts on the Longhorns?
I just think Texas looks beatable. Like, that was my first thought. And there's no doubt that Texas wants to run the ball, right? With Malik Murphy in at quarterback, they talked on the broadcast about maybe getting Quinn Ewers back. But with the injury he has, unless he turns into Superman, he's not going to play. The odds of him playing against K-State are very low. And Texas has full confidence in Murphy, but he threw an interception in the first half. He threw a lot of balls in harm's way. And I'll be the first to say it. I don't think BYU is very good. BYU is not very good. That is a team who has gotten by. They've gotten lucky a lot this year when they have won. But they just didn't look very good against Texas. It's obvious they didn't have the athletes. But all Texas did really to win that game was run the ball. It was 21-6 in the fourth quarter. Texas got stuffed on the goal line multiple times. But again, this is the attitude that I think Sark has of, hey, we're up by 15. Let's kick the field goal and go up 3 scores, right? That's what a normal person would do. But Sark's like, no, we're going to score a touchdown. And he got stuffed twice. So, at what point do you learn your mistake? And if he coaches like that against K-State, that's going to come back to bite him. Right. Let that be known. But, the quarterback is a big thing, and I think Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. I don't think he's an amazing quarterback, but there is an obvious drop-off between Malik Murphy and Quinn Ewers, and so I'll be very curious to see how the game plan changes against K-State. They didn't really need to score that many points against BYU because their offense was very stagnant, but they're going to have to score points against K-State because K-State's going to be able to score. They were able to score last year. They're going to be able to score against Texas.
I think the biggest thing that's changed in this series between these two teams is for a long time, Texas did not respect Kansas State, and they paid the price. They got beat a number of times. And as of late, Tom Herman started this, and now Sark has continued it. This game's circled. Mm-hmm. This game, I don't know where it sits on their pecking order, but it might be the second most focused upon game outside of Oklahoma on the schedule on an annual basis for Texas, just because they know the importance of it. Mm-hmm. And they came into Manhattan and dominated last year, but it was their run game. They don't have the same run game they did last year. They have the same offensive line, but it hasn't been as an effective run game where they ran for, 184 today? Mm-hmm. I don't have my glasses on. I'm blind. It's a good running game, but not great. I'm not a big Quinn Ewers fan, but he's clearly the best they have. And Malik Murphy, 16 of 25 for 170? Mm-hmm. 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Those are okay numbers.
Mm-hmm. Against a BYU team that gave up 44 points and 400-something passing yards to Hoover, last week.
Yeah.
So take that for what it's worth, too.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a big week at Go Powercat as we continue to cover all of these things and dig really deep into what K-State and Texas means. And we're also going to have a lot of basketball coverage throughout the week as K-State has their exhibition game on Wednesday night. Is that correct?
I didn't even know that.
And then they tip off Monday.
Crazy.
A week for Monday in Las Vegas. And we'll be staffing both football and basketball. But I have to talk about KU beating Oklahoma for one selfish reason. We all know I suck at betting. I bet a parlay today, and I picked Kansas to win.
Wow.
Outright. And then I changed it to Oklahoma. I got every other leg right.
Actually, you know what's funny? The exact same thing happened to me.
I couldn't get myself. I knew this would be a competitive game. One, because Lance Leipold is an incredible coach. Two, Oklahoma isn't all that people want to think they are.
No.
They have played no one. That win over Texas was notable, but now the kind of framework of that win now comes into question because I'm not sure about Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I knew this game would be competitive. I thought they'd win if Jalen Daniels, his mysterious injured back that he walks around just fine with. Let me tell you, when my back's injured, you can tell. You can tell. But I'm not trying to play football either. I don't know. I'm just saying back injuries are what people get who want to.
You can't even say when Jalen Daniels plays. At this point, you just can't assume that he's even on the team.
So I thought if he played, I was convinced they'd win. But Bean, I can't. He's a solid backup. I was texting with someone or conversing with someone. I said, they described him as chaotic. And I said, that's why he's a good backup quarterback, because the chaos might work in your favor if he comes in mid-game. But the chaos over the course of a game ends up being too much, and he threw a key interception. And then there should have been a second interception in the fourth quarter that the guy dropped, and then they found a way to win. I'm impressed. I think I've been saying Kansas is good. I've been saying Oklahoma isn't everything. They still haven't proven to me anything because they hadn't beat anyone outside of Texas. They've had the weakest schedule you could imagine. And now Kansas got them. And next week gets really interesting. Next week gets to be fascinating about what could take place around the Big 12 because some of these matchups, you got TCU and Tech on a Thursday night. You got Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. You got K-State and Texas. Houston and Baylor, two teams that are really struggling. Kansas goes to Iowa State. Iowa State won on the road at Baylor. BYU, West Virginia. Well, West Virginia's going to win that. UCF and Cincinnati. Someone will probably win that game.
Yeah. Oof.
They're both over in the count.
How was that on FS1? That should be on ESPN Plus.
Well, I'm really fascinated by next week's schedule because it is a full 7-game schedule, which we haven't had many of.
Yeah.
One is on Thursday. Only 6 of them are on the weekend, as we're apparently out of bye weeks now. What are they going to do with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State, Texas? Those are both really good games. There's other games, but they will be using, the networks will be using their 6-day windows for the rest of the season. They have 4 a year. They had used none. Mm-hmm. They're going to use them the rest of the year. So we should find out tonight or tomorrow, certainly tomorrow, what the schedule is in terms of TV. We don't have a kickoff for Texas, K-State, or 2 of the games were put on FS1 / the Big 12 Network, which is basically what it's functioned as.
Right.
And then we'll find out the rest. Is it possible that Big Noon and also Game Day are at 2 Big 12 games next week?
I thought Big Noon came out and announced where they were going.
I don't know.
Or it was Game Day that came out and announced where they were going, and it wasn't.
Was it?
It wasn't Bedlam, which I think is kind of ridiculous. I get it. Oh, you lost, but that's the last time that game's going to be played. And how long? If I were to guess, Big Noon kickoff goes to Oklahoma State. Because if Game Day's not going to take that seems like something you have to take. I mean, if you're a college football fan, that seems like a game that you're going to want to watch, regardless of what the team's records are, because of the rivalry. So if I were to bet, I would imagine Oklahoma State gets a 11 a.m. kickoff on Fox, and K-State, Texas either gets a night kickoff on Fox or a night kickoff on ESPN. I don't think that these games would be stacked. These are obviously the 2 best games in the conference. I could see K-State being a night game, KU Iowa State being the 2:30, and Oklahoma State being big noon at 11. If I'm going to go on the record and guess, that's going to be my guess.
I like your guessing. It will be interesting to see when K-State and Texas goes, and if what kind of notoriety the game gets. It clearly could decide one of the teams in the Big 12 championship.
College football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, and notoriously, K-State is always higher in the college football playoff rankings than they are in the AP poll. I don't think it's wild to think K-State could be top 15 in the college football playoff rankings.
Not with the way they're playing right now.
Because I think those people have a lot of respect for what K-State's able to do. And I know each year is self-contained, but you're looking at potentially a top 15 matchup, for sure a top 25 matchup. If K-State's not ranked on Tuesday night, then to hell with the rankings. Right? Like, this is a top 25 team. I think they're a top 15 in the country.
Absolutely.
And you can make an argument they could play with anybody in the top 10 right now. So
I'm also noting that the context of the two losses has changed dramatically. Oklahoma State came to life, and they've been playing really good football. Missouri has turned out to be a legitimate team. They were off this week, I believe, and they got Georgia next week. I think they're going to get their feelings hurt. But Missouri's a good team, and we knew that. We questioned their coaching, but Eli Drinkwitz has done a good job with them this season. So I think the negativity surrounding those two losses has lightened up, and now what they're doing, they're just stomping opponents. They're beating the daylights out of teams. Remaining schedule at Texas, come home, play Baylor, go to Kansas, which is going to be interesting, then come home and play an Iowa State team that is playing very good football.
As of right now, but regarding Iowa State, let's not ignore the fact that they have to play Kansas. They go to BYU, which won't be easy. They play Texas at home, and then they have to play K-State. Not saying that they're going to lose the next 4 games.
They could lose the next.
But they could lose the next 4 games.
They certainly could lose 3 of those.
Yeah.
That's a big game for Kansas. Kansas is still in the discussion for the Big 12 title game. This win changed everything for them. Now they're a 2-loss team instead of a 3-loss team. And let's say Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma next week, but I don't know. Cincinnati upsets them tonight. You could find a way in as a 2-win team if you've got the right wins, or 2-loss team, as long as you got the right wins and losses. It's a challenge because they now only have a tiebreaker against Oklahoma, but if even K-State beats Texas next week, they don't have the tiebreaker with Texas, and so they'd be out. They pretty much have to beat K-State, win out and beat K-State to be in the conversation. We'll see. Cole, I'm going to say something. I think these last 2 games back-to-back have been the best K-State football I've seen in a very long time. And remember last year, they absolutely killed Colorado. Where did Colorado come from in my brain? How did Colorado seep in there? They killed Oklahoma State and then went on the road and dominated Baylor. These 2 games were just – we saw teams just shut down. I mean, TCU was in just out of their minds trying to score a touchdown at the end of the game. And Houston said, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go home to Houston. Let's go back to Texas. This is their first game of the season outside of Texas. I loved their schedule. If you're in Texas and your non-conference is Rice, which they lost, Sam Houston, and UTSA, that's pretty cool. I mean, there's hardly any travel involved in any of those games for anyone. And then your only road game that point in Big 12 play had been at Texas Tech. You had not left the state of Texas, and as you're arriving home, probably about an hour before we started recording this, they never want to leave Texas again.
Never again. Too bad they have to go to Florida in the season with probably one of the worst. That's like in 3A football in Kansas, Fitz, they still do districts. So there's 2 teams that won't make a district that could play each other. That's what's going to be.
Yeah.
It's like nobody cares about that game. Neither team's going to be going to a bowl game. And so they're just going to be playing, Somebody is going to be a winner and somebody's going to be a loser.
Man, the newcomers are struggling. I think next year we'll see Utah be competitive, maybe good. Look, they're going to be shocked at how physical it is week in and week out in this conference. And they struggled with Oregon today, but I think Oregon and Washington both belong in the conversation for the playoff. If there's one conference right now that should be talking about 2 teams in the playoff, it's the Pac. It's impressive. It's impressive. Any final thoughts on K-State's 41-0 victory?
I will say that I thought the crowd, for being a 30-degree weather, rainy 11 a.m. kickoff, it wasn't rainy, it was windy. I thought it was really good in the beginning part of the game. Then when it became obvious that you know what? Let's maybe go back to the car, get some maybe some products from a liquor store that doesn't sponsor this podcast. Hey, but nobody sponsors it, so I can say it. The fridge,
right?
You know, why not? And so I thought people did that, but overall, I mean, I thought the atmosphere again was tremendous today. And
I
you
don't
could
blame
tell.
anyone for leaving.
No, I don't either.
It was cold. It was damp. It was a blowout. It wasn't an entertaining game. Unless you love to watch someone beat the snot out of a smaller person, because that's what it was. It was like a bully just going at it. It was, stop. He's dead already. I mean, poor Houston. Wow. And what's amazing, if you watch the pregame press conference with Dana Holgorsen, he knew this was coming. If you go back and watch the what he said. In fact, I think I'll find it and end up closing this podcast with what he said. And tell me the honest answer, folks, as we wrap it up. Is Dana Holgorsen a prophet?
They're playing as good as anybody in the country, and they're the defending Big 12 champs. It's a hard place to go play. I've been there multiple times. You think Texas was a challenge because of how talented they are and well coached. This team is extremely good. Extremely sound, well coached, best coached team in the country. Their players don't mess up, and they score. So, welcome to the Big 12. This is what we signed up for, so let's go.
Thank you for listening to the Powercat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Matt Ryan?
Did you know the NFL playoffs on CBS stream live on Paramount Plus?
I just want a frozen fudge bar.
Bet you didn't know Super Bowl 58 was in Vegas this year.
What about a Sunday?
Super Bowl Sunday on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus.
Seriously?
Would an NFL MVP lie?
Former MVP. Can we at least get a selfie?
Of course.
I got your NFL playoffs on CBS and Super Bowl 58 streaming live on Paramount Plus.
You ready to ride? I thought you'd never ask.
It's the untold story of the greatest American lawman.
I'm warning you, your wicked days are done.
Lawman, Bass Reeves' new original series, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.